Welcome to Senior Basketball Analyst. It is, very early in the morning on the 10th of July, 2015. There's been some significant NBA news today, so we're gonna just go through it, whip right through it. Roy Hibbert was traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for 2 future second-round picks. This is one of those things that the Lakers, they're just a walking midpoint. They're just an organization that just doesn't know what it's doing. I don't know why. Basically, for a rent-a player, Roy Hibbert is playing for a contract for the new collective bargaining agreement. I have no idea, none at all, why you would give up 2 future second-round picks on a roster that's very thin on talent. You need those second-round picks because you don't even have 8 basketball players on your roster right now, not professional caliber basketball players. You need those second-round picks to fill out the bottom of your roster. And, you're going around doing silly stuff like signing Jeremy Lin, giving, buffoons like Nick Young, multi-million-dollar contracts. You need basketball players. You need young, hungry guys that are trying to make teams. You need guys like that. You give away second-round picks for a rent-a player, and Hibbert, we don't even really know what he's about at this point. A few years back against the Heat, he exploded and gave them a really good series. Gave the Pacers, I should say, a really good series. Since then, Hibbert has just been incredibly inconsistent on both ends of the floor, not just offensively, but defensively as well. We know Hibbert's an elite defender in terms of rim protection when he's focused, but the guy can't stay focused. He has not been consistent in a long time. So this is just another move by the Lakers that's just them just wasting time and doing silly stuff. Again, and this is where I go back to, they might as well throw the draft out and stop doing the draft. Because if teams are going to do things like this, like in this case, just throw their picks, just give their picks away for a guy who probably will re-sign or will probably sign a contract with another team next year. What do you want Roy Hibbert for a year for? For what? You're going to be at the bottom of the conference. What are you doing that for? Just a strange situation. In acquisitions that make sense, Gerald Green was acquired by the Miami Heat. Gerald Green, look out for him. Now, Gerald Green's not a great player. That's not what I'm trying to express. But what he is he's a reliable three-point shooter. He's a 3 and dunk guy. He's like a video game guy. If you're running out, closing out too hard, he put the ball on the floor. And I mean, he can jump. He jumps off a trampoline. He explodes at the rim. He's really the only half-court trick dunker in the league at this point. He's the type of dude that will go baseline at 360. He's an incredible talent in terms of his entertainment value. Him being on a good team with actual good players and on a franchise that makes some sense in rotation, I'm really looking forward to Heat games. I was already looking forward to them as a roster, in terms of championship implications, but he's a guy that can just add to the entertainment value. So as an NBA fan, I think it's a really cool signing. And he's going to help them at the shooting guard and, small forward positions. He can guard both wing positions. He's going to be out on the break finishing strong, and he's a trail, 3 guy. So this is going to be fun. This is going to be a lot of fun. Now to get to something that we don't talk about this kind of stuff that often, because frankly, I don't think these kind of stories show up and they're actually interesting. But in this case, this is an interesting story. In Summer League, they're trying this new, they're calling it a pilot program where they're going to track hustle stats, like closing out on defense and things like that. This is another one of those where I just shake my head. Scouts, watch the games. Like, I don't need a stat for that. Because here's the thing. There was a time, and I know, this is some get off my lawn stuff, but there was a time when you were supposed to guard your man, right? That wasn't a statistic that someone would keep. Like, did you, close out and contest the shot Did you hustle for that loose ball? Those were just things you did. You didn't have a whole fleet of players on your team. You didn't have 2/3 of your roster just not doing any of that stuff. And now you have to have specific guys on your team. It's like all these teams, we've said it here on the show before. It's like all these teams are trying to take a bunch of different one-dimensional players and cobble them together and then pretending like that's a real player. Everybody is supposed to be closing out on their man, like getting on the floor for loose balls. That's called playing the game. It's so silly to try to break these things down into statistics. It's just unnecessary. If you're not closing out on your man, I'm not signing you. If you're not closing out, you're cut. Like, what is this? Where you just don't guard your man and it's like, well, that's not his job on this team. What are we doing? Like, what are we doing as a basketball community in terms of us as fans and players? What are we doing here? We just look, man, look, all this stuff seems to me, it just seems like a way to give a guy a bunch of staff, put them on the team and do things. That's all this seems like to me. It's like, here's some unconventional BS we can use to justify putting this guy on the team who actually isn't good at basketball. It's like, oh, well, he technically led the summer league in closeouts. And you know what? And I'll tell you something else too. Closing out don't do any good if the guy hits the shot. All right. For all these people that want to do you hear that common that it's now become a silly, saying about, well, everybody gets a trophy and America's so soft and blah, blah, blah. It's a news type thing. What is this? What is this? Oh, if you close out, that's a good. You're supposed to close out and bother the guy into a miss. You're supposed to close out and block it. You're not supposed to just close out and if the guy hits it right in your face, then fine. This is the NBA, man. You're supposed to stop baskets. Like, that's why we're watching this. We're not watching this because these guys play like my next door neighbor. That's not why we're watching it. We're watching it because these guys are supposed to be able to do things that other people can't do. They're the greatest players in the world. They're supposed to be able to stop people. You're supposed to be able to score off the dribble. You're supposed to be able to do these things. This thing where people are just tiptoeing around, flinging up open jump shots, and they can't guard a man, and they can't board, and they can't pass, they can't do anything else. Look, we saw what happened to Kyle Korver in the playoffs. Kyle Korver is the best standstill shooter in the world. We saw what happened in the playoffs. Bradley Beal got a hold of him, couldn't score. Iman Shumpert got a hold of him, couldn't score. J.R. Smith, who can't even defend, he couldn't score. Because when you're a player that you rely on assists, you rely on people setting screens for you. When you can't score any other way, when it comes playoff time and people are actually focused on locking you down and people are in those scouting reports and taking that stuff seriously and it's do or die time, a guy like Kyle Korver, all-star Kyle Korver, a guy like that, he's not going to be able to function. Not going to be able to function. And he's the best in the world at it. And this is what we boil in the NBA down to. We got a league where a third of players, that's what they do. They stand still and fling jump shots. It's ridiculous. And this hustle stats thing is just more nonsense. The things they're trying to count, are things you're supposed to do as a basketball player. If you're not doing them, you should be cut. It's all dumb. It's all dumb. I get to things that are much less dumb, but people don't seem to really understand the whole DeAndre Jordan situation. Here's the thing, man. I hear a lot of people, and there was a lot of this kind of talk when LeBron James and Chris Bosh decided to go join Dwayne Wade in Miami. And people, I've had all manner of people say this to me, coworkers, all kinds of random people. Well, players have too much power. What? Why? Why would you just lean that way for no reason? But do you know owners? Like, why are you leaning that way? Because you watch the games for the players. You're supposed to want the players to have influence. You're supposed to want them to have power. That's why I talk about when guys get paid, I talk about how good that is that they get paid. I'm still waiting on Timofey Mozgov. I want him to get his money. And they picked up his option, but his option was kind of garbage. I think he makes $4 million or something. Hopefully he'll get a big giant deal next year when his contract's up in the and we have the first full year of the new giant cap and new max deals and all that stuff. So hopefully he'll get a nice chunk of change. I also found out something else, and I was not aware of this, and maybe other people were. So I'm going to sidetrack really quickly. As it turns out, when you sign a deal like Jimmy Butler's deal when the cap went up became worth the overall quantity of the deal he's going to make jumped up too. So that actually explains why a player like Jimmy Butler would just sign the max deal, because there's no reason to wait for the next one to come up. There's no real reason to wait till next year, because when the cap jumped, what a guy with a max contract makes, or actually a lot of the contracts are written like this, and I'm not sure if they all are, but a lot of them are written like this. You make a percentage of your team's cap space. It's like the Derrick Rose deal. I believe Derrick Rose was a quarter of the cap or something like that. That is the way these deals work. So when that cap jumped, and it jumped up a little more than people thought it would, up to 70 million, Jimmy Butler, that just gets tacked onto his contract, and he's going to make, I think, an extra 700,000 or something like that per year. The numbers in particular don't matter. I'm just letting you know that I learned something new, and I was not aware of that before. So I was mistaken on that. There is no real incentive for that matter than to wait. You might as well just sign, and it gets added into your deal when the cap goes up. So that's the way it worked, at least and specifically for people signing match contracts. I'm certain of that. But to jump back to DeAndre Jordan, DeAndre Jordan and these players taking control of their own destiny is a good thing. We watch the game for the players. We don't watch the game for the owners. The owners are just really – the owners at this point are just reprehensible. Most of them do a terrible job running the team. They don't know anything about the sport. It's just a toy for them. It's not like these owners are not Dr. Jerry Buss, the late Dr. Buss. They're not him, right? They didn't build this franchise up into being something that was small into something big and preside over the team as the NBA grew into this massive global entity. No, that's not what happened. These guys are all guys just buying fancy toys, just like they buy a yacht or something else that's just an expensive toy. That's what these teams are. And then they don't even have to pay for their stadiums, and they get all kinds of corporate welfare. There's no reason to be on their side. They don't need you to be on their side and don't want you on their side. Look, you're the Atlanta Hawks owner. If you're black, he don't even want you at the games. He literally had to sell the team because of those statements. So why would you – I can't fathom why anybody that's an actual NBA fan would not want the players to get as much money as possible and have as much control over where they work and live as possible. It makes no sense to me. I loved what LeBron and Chris Bosh did, because usually it's the other way around. And I mean by usually 9.9, it's the organization just shipping you off somewhere random for dumb reasons. They don't even have a good reason for doing it. It's like when the Atlanta Hawks sent Dominique Wilkins to the Clippers. It was like they just did that to punish him. They sent him to the worst organization in the league just to be doing it. This is the kind of thing that just bugs me about the NBA and its fan base. DeAndre Jordan, there's no reason for anybody to be upset with DeAndre Jordan. He didn't try to break a contract. He didn't sign anything. He didn't have anything signed on the dotted line. I'll tell you like this. If the Dallas Mavericks had found out something or found somebody they like better, they sure wouldn't have tendered the contract. So why are we going to pin this all on DeAndre Jordan as though people have never walked away from the table and decided not to sign something that they hadn't signed yet? That's so silly. I actually read, this is one of those rare cases where I read some of the comments under an article. I actually read a comment from somebody that said, yeah, I walked away from a couple of contracts in my career, but what DeAndre did with it, dude, what are you talking about, man? It kills me the stuff people preface statements with. It's like you just torpedoed all your credibility, and now you're gonna start pontificating about why it's not okay for him to do what you just did. This is all nonsense. I'll tell you something else. Let's talk about Mark Cuban for a second. Mark Cuban has no credibility. Not with me, anyway. He has no credibility. Now, he does seem to run the Dallas Mavericks pretty well. He's got a championship. They're always in contention. Around contention. They're a good team. They've been a good franchise under him. On the other hand, Mark Cuban has a series of red flags. I was reading in Bloomberg News, and Bloomberg News is this is obviously a pro-business publication. Bloomberg News, the only reason this dude avoided the SEC charges was because quote, his trial lawyers outmaneuvered the SEC lawyers because the SEC is incompetent. He did not avoid the insider trading because he was definitely innocent. No, his lawyers were just better lawyers, and he beat the case. More importantly, though, remember Donald Sterling? And here's the thing about Donald Sterling. The media always shows itself, and everybody showed themselves what they were about with Donald Sterling. Back when Donald Sterling was serially participating in housing discrimination. And what does that mean? Well, what it means is he basically was performing privatized segregation. That's what that is. Okay. Now, this for all of you Confederate flag wavers, you guys that, wave that, flag of surrender and treason around and talk about states' rights and all these other foolish, historically inaccurate nonsense, you're not going to care about any of this. And you know what? Don't listen to my show. Go and burn a cross or whatever it is you do in your spare time. But for those of you that care about facts, Donald Sterling was serially doing things like this, not accepting rent from his black tenants and his Mexican tenants, and then using the fact that they hadn't paid their rent to evict them. Things like that. Now, can you imagine if that happened to you? This is your home. This is where you raise your family. And then all of a sudden your rent checks are not being cashed. And then your landlord goes to the government and says, yeah, I'm evicting this clown. He doesn't pay his rent. He's a deadbeat. And then he probably says, he's black. You know how they are. Can you imagine if that happened to you? Well, guess what? He made this a business practice. This was the kind of thing he did. He sent his wife, the greatest Clipper fan ever, that Doc Rivers, for some reason, was licking her boots. He sent his wife to pretend to be a government official and harass his black tenants. Oh yeah. What else did he do? In his buildings in Korean neighborhoods, he refused to rent to anyone else other than Koreans. And this is how segregation has continued after segregation was outlawed, because of people like Donald Sterling. Donald Sterling is not some old guy that says funny Archie Bunker-esque things and has no power, and that's it. Donald Sterling is a insidious racist, always has been, and the NBA was perfectly fine with that until this weird, silly, sexualized scandal came out with language that is not seen as appropriate. When he was performing actual racism that actually destroys families and actually harms people, that was perfectly fine with the NBA. And Adam Silver, I can't express my disgust with Adam Silver enough. J.A. Adonde, to his credit, actually brought up that when Adam Silver was doing his victory lap about how he was punishing Donald Sterling so harshly, J.A. Adande actually stood up and had the courage to ask, hey, we know Donald Sterling was a racist for a long time. Why now is he being fired like this? What he did was so bad. He did much worse things before to black people. You have a mostly black league. Why now? Adam Silver said, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you referring to? What do you mean, what are you referring to? Everybody knows that he was sued and paid millions of dollars in damages and court fees to his two litigants because he was participating in housing discrimination. Look, by the way, do you know how ironclad a case has to be for you to basically win a racism lawsuit? You have to have that stuff so figured like this. Elgin Baylor didn't win his. Elgin Baylor came in and told everybody exactly what type of individual Don Sterling is by him running his organization like a plantation, about him saying that he wanted all of his he wanted a team full of poor Southern black players coached by a white guy, just like a plantation. Now, you heard the kind of things Don Sterling says. Does that sound out of the ordinary to you? Of course it doesn't. But see, it was Elgin Baylor saying it, and he didn't have any proof, so everybody just acted like he was a crazy old man or something. Donald Sterling was one of the worst owners in the history of professional athletics. The Clippers were a running joke until, and credit Kenny Smith for pointing this out on Inside the NBA, until the NBA instituted, along with a salary cap ceiling, a salary cap floor. And until you had to spend a certain percentage of basketball revenue on your players' salaries, Donald Sterling's Clippers teams were a gigantic joke. The only thing that got them out of the basement was that he had to spend money, so he kept a few players. And then, oh, look, we're accidentally good all of a sudden. Donald Sterling was a complete piece of garbage. So was his wife. And you say, what's this got to do with DeAndre Jordan and Mark Cuban? Remember, Mark Cuban vociferously defended Donald Sterling. Vociferously. After all the stuff that was so cartoonish, everybody was against Donald Sterling. Mark Cuban rode to the rescue. That's the type of individual Mark Cuban is. Nobody should want to play for Mark Cuban. I mean, look, if you're the kind of white guy that doesn't care about your black teammates, then fine, go play for Mark Cuban. But no black player should play for Mark Cuban. They shouldn't. And remember what Donald Sterling said to whatever that horrible woman that was recording him, whatever her name is, I forget, doesn't matter. Remember what he said on the tape. He explained to her that he didn't have a problem with Magic Johnson. He didn't want his friends in the circle he runs in, he didn't want them seeing someone that he goes to bed with hanging out with black guys at his games, because that's bad. Who is in his circle? Other NBA owners. That is who owns these teams. People that think like that. That is what Donald Sterling said when he was not being recorded. That's those kinds of statements. Those kinds of statements are generally, at least from the point of view of the speaker, seen to be honest. That's the kind of thing that's admissible in court. When somebody doesn't even know they're being recorded. Oftentimes, these ends up being statements of penal interest. And I'm not the senior legal analyst, so I'm not going to get deep into the law. But I'm just making a point. When somebody's being secretly recorded, I mean, he was saying it the way that he sees it to be true. And in his circles, it is not okay for a woman, even if she is black. Look, I don't understand the inner workings of the mind of a racist. I just know what the result is. So I don't understand how he can he can go around with her, but then she can't be seen with other black people. She's black. It doesn't make sense to me. Whatever. But in his circles, that's not okay. And his circle includes Mark Cuban. That's who owners hang out with, other rich guys that own teams. So when you're watching these, look, it's pretty simple. As David West said at the time, he said on Twitter, anybody that's surprised by this is extremely naive. So whenever you hear these statements and they come out about any of these owners, and whenever you hear these recordings and they always have a bunch of racist stuff on them, that's what these owners think about their black players. They love watching these guys go out and entertain them. It's very similar to the slave trade. That's how they think. Okay? That's how they think. And I know that's how they think because Donald Sterling told us that's how they think. Okay? And again, Mark Cuban couldn't wait to defend this guy. So DeAndre Jordan made the right choice. He stuck with the guy that helped, build him into being a star player, build him into being a max caliber player in Doc Rivers. The Steve character owns the team now. I don't assume he's much better than Donald Sterling. There's no reason for me to assume that. Why would I? But at least he has proved it to us yet that he hates us. So that's fine, right? That's about as good as it gets sometimes. But DeAndre did the right thing. He hadn't signed anything and then tried to go back on that agreement. So there really is nothing to see here. There just isn't. And people can get mad all they want, but when people are doing dishonest business deals, and when they're engaging in predatory loans and all this wide-scale financial fraud, none of these people go to jail. None of these people are even reprimanded. And the fines they have to pay, they don't even pay the fines themselves. Their giant financial institution pays it. And it's like, it'd be like if you got fined $1, it's like some fraction of the profits they made on all the illegal trades that they made. So the accountability just isn't there for people in Mark Cuban's class. So for DeAndre Jordan, when he didn't even do anything that was even sort of illegal, what are we really talking about here? I'll wrap up with this. This is a really cool story. And people are trying to kind of throw garbage on it and make DeAndre Jordan look bad. And there's no reason for that, because the real story is here that supposedly he had some kind of rift with Chris Paul, and Chris Paul cut his vacation short, got his vacation with Wade and LeBron and Melo for some reason. He cut his vacation short, flew out to Houston. Blake Griffin was there. The owner of the Clippers was there. Doc Rivers was there. These guys all, sat with that dude and waited until the clock hit 12:01 and then dropped the contract in front of him. That's cool, man. That's really cool that they wanted him to stay and they cared enough about it that they wanted him to stay. That's really cool. It would be cool to have a job like that. It would be cool if when you were thinking about leaving your company, your coworkers, your boss offers you a ridiculous amount of money that you've never seen before. And then your coworkers huddled around you and said, man, you have to stay because we have unfinished business. Wouldn't that be cool to have a job like that? Well, DeAndre Jordan does. And that's part of the reason why we like sports, because sports is an exaggerated it's an exaggerated arena that we get to view larger than life figures doing things that would be cool if we were able to do. That's what's great about sports. That's the reason you watch it. You watch the NBA because, man, it'd be cool if you could do a 360 slam. That would be pretty cool. It'd be cool if you could hit a three with a dude draped all over you. It'd be cool if you could do like Steph Curry and hit a dude, tap a dude behind the back twice and do fall over, and then you hit the three in his face. That would be cool. These guys get to do something for a living that most of us won't get to do because we aren't capable. We aren't good enough to do that. And they also get to, have a job where there's a type of camaraderie that we don't really experience at work. We go to work every day, and frankly, it's terrible. That's why they pay us to do it. It stinks. They get to do something that's pretty cool when we enjoy watching it. And these guys show some camaraderie that's rarely shown. And that's a good story. It's a cool thing. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but in sports terms, it's about as good as it gets. This is a good story. And anybody that's trying to throw dirt on it, you have fun being bah humbug and, watch Matthew Dellavedova cut block people and stuff like that. Have fun with that garbage. I'm going to enjoy this for what it was. And, much success to the Clippers going forward. And watch out for Lance Stevenson. I'm saying it right now. Watch out for Lance Stevenson. Lance Stevenson is going to be back. So with that, this is, the July 10th, 2015 edition, Senior Basketball Analyst. I will be back soon. We're coming up with the power. We're going to do our Power 4 rankings very soon. We still got the Scottie Pippen special we're putting together. So stay tuned. We got great content for you coming all through the summer. SBA, and you know that.
Cause I'm all, they fall and crawl into the pit of purgatory. I go for glory. I'm taking inventory, counting all the